This happened almost a month ago. I was working the night shift at St. Mary's Hospital, like I had done for years. The hospital felt familiar. I knew the flickering lights and worn floors well. Yet, that night, things started to feel different. It was around 2 a.m. when I noticed the first strange thing. I was on my way to the break room. I felt tired and wanted coffee. As I walked down the hallway, I saw a glowing outline in the corner. It looked like a child. Small and bright. But when I blinked, it was gone. I stood there for a moment, confused and unsure. I thought maybe I was just exhausted. I shook my head and walked on, telling myself it didn't matter. As the nights went by, I started to hear laughter. Soft, echoing in the empty halls. I would stop and turn, expecting to see a kid, but there was nothing. Each laugh sent a chill down my spine. I told myself it was my imagination. Stress could do that to you. A few nights later, I found something odd. In one of the patient rooms, I found a dusty old toy. It was a small stuffed bear, alone. I was sure it hadn't been there before. Picking it up made my skin crawl, but I couldn't just leave it behind. One night, while I was watching a patient, I leaned back in my chair. The laughter rang out again, louder this time. My heart raced. It sounded like it was coming from the hallway. I stepped out, the silence heavy around me. I looked down the corridor. My mind drifted to the stories I had heard about the hospital, how it used to care for sick children. Maybe one of them got lost? Those thoughts lingered, making me uneasy. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The shadows felt alive, darting around corners, just out of sight. I often stood still, listening. I would hear whispers. Maybe just the wind or something else. In those moments, I couldn't be sure. That feeling settled deep in my gut. I even started checking logs of past patients, hoping to find some sign of a child. But everything appeared normal. Then, one late shift, the laughter echoed again, followed by a rush behind me. I turned quickly. Nothing was there. Only the empty hallway and my racing heart. I wanted to retreat to my station, but something kept me there. It felt wrong to ignore it. I moved toward the sound, and suddenly, I felt a cold rush against my arm, like someone had breathed on me. I froze. That's when I heard a whisper. "Help me." I spun around, but there was no one there. My heart pounded in my chest. I never expected this. I'm still not sure what happened during those nights. Were they just tricks of my tired mind? Or was there something more beyond understanding? The next night, I was back at the hospital, my mind still reeling from the last shift. I walked through the familiar halls, but the shadows seemed thicker. I arrived at the nurse's station, hoping the buzz of conversations would distract me. But it was mostly empty. Just a few charts and the flickering overhead lights. I focused on the patients, checking on their vitals and making notes. The hours dragged on until I finally took my break. I stepped into the break room, the only place that felt somewhat safe. As I stood by the coffee machine, I heard it again, the faint laughter. My stomach twisted. I looked toward the door. No one was there. Just the echo of my thoughts. I poured my coffee, trying to shake it off, but the laughter was now joined by a strange thumping sound. Like a small fist hitting the wall. I set my cup down hard, the coffee spilling. I had to see what was going on. Cautiously, I made my way back into the hallway. The sounds grew louder, moving away from the break room. I followed them, heart racing with each step. As I turned the corner, I spotted the flickering light at the end of the hall. It was the same spot where I had first seen the glowing outline. I moved closer, fists clenched. Suddenly, everything grew still. The laughter and thumping stopped. I stood at the edge, uncertainty wrapping around me. That's when I saw it, a small figure darting into a nearby room. My breath caught in my throat. Was it real? My mind raced with possibilities. I had to see. I pushed the door open carefully. The room was dark, curtains drawn tight. I called out softly, "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice felt small against the silence. It echoed back to me. I stepped in, the air thick. There, on the floor, lay the stuffed bear I had found before. Right beside it was a crumpled piece of paper. I picked it up, my hands shaking. It was a child's drawing. A stick figure girl holding hands with a larger stick figure. They were drawn with careful little lines, and a date marked in the corner, 1998. I pressed my lips together, the date didn't make sense. That girl couldn't still be here, could she? Before I could think further, the lights flickered violently. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. Then, just as sudden, the overhead lights went out, plunging the room into darkness. I felt a rush of air around me, a whisper brushing against my ear. "Help me." Panic clawed at me as I turned toward the door, but it slammed shut. My breath caught in my throat, pounding in my ears. I was trapped inside with whatever was lurking in the shadows. I needed to act fast. "Let me out!" I yelled, banging on the door, my voice rising in pitch. But I felt a coldness creeping in, wrapping around me like icy fingers. The sensation gripped me tight, making me freeze in place. That's when the laughter came back, ringing clear and bright. But this time, it didn't sound playful. It felt urgent. And that urgency twisted my gut with fear. I had to figure this out. Or I might not make it out at all. The room felt like a tomb as I stood frozen, the darkness swallowing me whole. I could barely breathe with the cold closing in. The laughter echoed again, more frantic. A child's voice filled with desperation. "Help me." It was as if my mind was betraying me, allowing that voice to seep into my reality. I had to find a way to escape. I rushed back to the door, pounding on it harder. "Please. Open up." But the door held firm, unyielding. I glanced back into the shadows, heart racing. "Is someone there? Please." I felt stupid calling out, but it was my only option. The air thickened, and I heard a soft dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor. My eyes widened, straining to see in the murky darkness. I caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow just at the edge of the faint light seeping from the corridor outside. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice trembling. No answer came, but the dragging sound grew closer. I knew I had to stay calm. I scanned the room for something, anything, that could help. My fingers closed around the stuffed bear. I squeezed it tight, feeling ridiculous for clinging to a child's toy, but it somehow grounded me. I took a deep breath and moved away from the door, toward the sound. As I stepped forward, the dragging stopped. I squinted into the darkness, trying to make sense of the shape lurking there. "Are you lost?" I asked, voice steadying. "I can help you." At that moment, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the room. My heart raced as I found myself face to face with the small figure I had seen dart in earlier. She was a little girl, hair cascading in wild curls, her face ashen and wide-eyed. "Help me," she said again, her voice barely a whisper. "They won't let me leave." Before I could respond, the walls of the room seemed to shift, closing in. Panic surged again. "Who won't let you leave?" I shouted, feeling trapped in this nightmare. "Don't trust them," she pleaded, her eyes darting to the door. "It's not safe." At that moment, the room shook violently. I stumbled, and the girl fell to the floor, clutching her doll. The lights flickered again, and the walls groaned as if they were alive. "You need to go," she cried, scrambling back toward the corner, trying to evade something unseen. I had to decide. Stay and learn more or flee while I had the chance. Where do I go? I yelled, but she just shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. The laughter returned, louder and more chaotic, filling the small space with dread. With no time left to think, I rushed to the door. I hurled myself against it, and to my shock, it swung open, exposing the bright corridor outside. I didn't look back. I dashed into the hallway, heart pounding in my ears, but the laughter continued to echo, the little girl's voice lost amid its chaos. I stumbled down the hall, desperate for answers. A chill ran down my spine. Something was very wrong. I knew I had to find out more about this girl. There had to be a reason she was there, trapped like me. Who was she? I whispered to myself while gripping the stuffed bear tightly. The questions gnawed at me. Each step carried me deeper into the mystery that surrounded not just the hospital, but the very fabric of my newfound reality. Then, the lights flickered above me, and I knew that whatever was chasing me was still close behind. As I sprinted down the corridor, the echo of my footfalls mixed with that sinister laughter. I glanced back instinctively, half expecting to see the little girl or some shadowy figure looming behind me, but the hallway was empty. I locked my eyes on the nearest exit sign, its green glow offering a false sense of security. I rounded a corner and crashed into a wall of darkness, a part of the hall where the lights had completely failed. I hesitated, the hairs on my neck prickling. The air felt heavier, colder. Get it together, I muttered under my breath. I needed to keep moving. I reached for my phone, fumbling in my pocket. I turned on the flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness. As I stepped cautiously forward, my mind raced. Why was that little girl here? What were the they she spoke of? I had to find anyone who could help. Just then, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. A flicker of pale movement. I spun around, the light catching a glimpse of what looked like a tattered hospital gown flapping in the shadows. I took a step closer, the beam of my phone illuminating a small room with a locked door. The sound of muffled whispers drifted through the cracks. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear. "Please, you have to help me," a voice pleaded, barely audible but familiar. My heart raced. Was it her? The little girl? I felt sick as I remembered the girl's warning, "Don't trust them." I hitched in a breath, fighting against the urge to open the door and confront whatever lay behind it. Instead, I pulled back. I had to find a way to get help, to get out. Suddenly, the air shifted again. The laughter rang clear, but this time it was accompanied by a shrill scream that sent chills through me. "No! Don't!" Without thinking, I rushed towards the source of the cries, my gut churning. It took me deeper into the hospital, away from the emergency exit. The walls seemed to pulse with life, and I could almost hear them taunting me, encouraging me to turn back. But I couldn't. I found myself in what looked like an old waiting room, the chairs dust-covered and the flickering lights casting eerie shadows everywhere. My heart was racing, and all I could hear was the sound of my own breath filling the silence. Then, just ahead, I saw a figure slumped over one of the chairs. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaking. "Are you okay?" The figure lifted its head slowly. It was a man, with wild eyes and stubble framing his tired face. "You need to leave," he rasped. "They're coming for you." Before I could ask who they were, the lights above us flickered violently. I could feel the floor shake beneath my feet. The man rose, his expression frantic. "Get out of here. Now!" In that moment, everything seemed to spiral into chaos. The laughter returned, louder and more menacing, almost drowning out his words. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut, trapping me inside. Suddenly, the lights went out completely. I was engulfed in darkness. My breath quickened, and I spun around, heart pounding. What is happening? I whispered into the void. Then everything went dark. I blinked in the pitch black, trying to adjust my eyes, but it felt like the darkness had absorbed everything. I raised my phone again, hoping for some light, but the screen remained stubbornly black. Panic gripped me. I stumbled back, my heart racing. I had to escape. The man's warning echoed in my mind. "They're coming for you." Just as I turned towards the small window that separated me from the hallway, a loud bang echoed through the room, followed by a slow creaking sound. The door. I held my breath, straining to listen. There it was again, the sound of something scraping against the metal. I backed away from the door, desperate for a plan. Just then, a faint glow flickered to life, a dim light emanating from the corner of the waiting room. Without thinking, I moved towards it. As I reached the source, I saw it was a small broken lamp. Its light barely illuminated a few feet ahead, but it was enough. I edged closer to where the man had been, but the chair was empty now. "Hello?" I called again, feeling foolish for seeking out a potentially dangerous presence. Silence responded, heavy and oppressive. My heart sank. Where had he gone? Then, a soft whisper cut through the silence, barely audible. "Help me." I froze, the voice unmistakably sounding like the little girl's. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I clung to the hope that I could help her. I followed the sound, stepping cautiously toward an old door in the far corner of the waiting room that had once been intricately painted. "Help me, please." The whisper grew stronger, filled with desperation. I reached for the doorknob, but as my fingers brushed against the cold metal, a surge of dread washed over me. I hesitated, half tempted to flee, but remembered the darkness closing in around me. With a deep breath, I turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing another dark corridor, barely lit by flickering lights far down the hall. A chill settled in my bones as I stepped through the threshold, the temperature dropping dramatically. "Hello?" I called into the corridor, my voice echoing off the walls a little more than ID-like. The air felt thick, and the whisper faded. I pressed forward, following the weak flickering light. Then I saw something at the end of the corridor, a figure standing in the dim glow. My pulse quickened as I recognized the tattered hospital gown. It was her. "Help me," she repeated, her eyes wide and pleading. Before I could reach out to her, I noticed another shadow creeping up behind her. My breath caught in my throat as the laughter returned, ugly and sharp. Glancing back, I saw the man from before was now standing within the darkness, staring at me with a wild look in his eyes. "You shouldn't trust her," he yelled, panic tinging his voice. I was trapped. One figure in front, one behind. I didn't know who to believe, but I could feel the walls closing in. I would have to make a choice, and I had only moments before whatever hunted me would strike. "Who are you?" I shouted over the growing laughter, feeling the weight of my decision pressing down on me. That's when the laughter echoed again, melding with a sinister whisper that chilled me to the bone. "Choose wisely." I locked eyes with the girl, my breath quickening as her gaze seemed to plead with me to come closer. Then I darted a glance back at the man who loomed behind me. The wild look in his eyes sent shivers down my spine. "What do you want?" I shouted, trying to portray a confidence I didn't feel. "Her," he replied, his voice a low growl. "You don't know what she is. You're walking into a trap." The girl used that moment to take a step forward, her small frame trembling slightly. "Please, I'm scared. I just want to go home." Her voice was raw with fear, and in that moment, I could see her vulnerability. I felt torn apart. The way the man described her unsettled me. I had to weigh my options. Each choice felt like a knife edge ready to plunge into darkness. "Stay away from her." I yelled at the man, stepping forward to shield the girl, unsure if that was bravery or pure foolishness. His laughter erupted, sharp and echoing through the corridor. "You don't even know what she has done. He took a menacing step closer, shadows licking at his heels. "She's the reason you're here." I shook my head, confusion swirling in my mind. "What do you mean?" "Help me," the girl whispered again, her voice barely above a breath. I turned back, caught in her gaze. It was haunting, yet somehow familiar, as if I had seen those eyes before. Then everything shifted. The ground pulsed beneath me, vibrating with an ominous hum. I stumbled, glancing towards the flickering lights that began to stutter more violently. "What is happening?" I reached out, grabbing the girl's hand. It felt cool and fragile in my grip. "They're coming," the man said, and that sent dread through me, recognition dawning painfully. I realized this was no ordinary night shift, this was a nightmare playing out in real time. Suddenly, the shadows around the girl thickened like smoke, curling and writhing. The laughter ratcheted up to a fever pitch, almost as if it fed off the fear in the air. I glanced back, ready to run, but the way out behind me was now swarmed with an eerie mist. The next few moments happened all at once. I felt an unnatural pull towards the girl, a mix of fear and resolve battling inside me. "I have to help her," I thought, but as I moved closer, her expression shifted. It was no longer innocent, something darker flickered behind her eyes. "Choose," she hissed, the softness of her plea replaced with an insidious tone that made my skin crawl. "You can save me, or you can save yourself." The man sneered, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "What will it be?" I felt the walls pressing in, the laughter crescendoing. My heart raced as terror gripped me. Just then, above the chaos, a loud crash echoed from behind me, and the lights flickered off completely, leaving me in total darkness. "Run!" came a voice from somewhere in the void. I couldn't tell if it was the man or the girl. The panic in my chest ignited into flames. I couldn't think, I could only act. With no clear path ahead, I bolted down the corridor, following the faint sound of shuffling footsteps and laughter. But as I ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was alive, that it was watching, waiting for my next choice. I sprinted through the corridor, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it could be heard over the chaos around me. The darkness closed in, a suffocating shroud that made every step a struggle. The laughter grew distant but felt like a shadow spurring me on. I stumbled around a corner and skidded to a halt. In front of me was an empty waiting room, chairs scattered carelessly, and a flickering television casting ghostly shadows on the walls. I couldn't hear anything besides my own gasping breath and the echo of my footsteps. I took a step inside, scanning for any sign of the girl or the man. Suddenly, an old, battered door to my left creaked open. A sliver of light spilled out, and I felt an instinctual pull toward it. My gut told me it could be an exit, or at least a chance to regroup. I stepped closer, pushing the door gently. It swung wide, revealing a dimly lit storage room filled with dusty equipment and old medical supplies. Just as I entered, the door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed like thunder. I spun around, heart racing, and pounded on the door. "Let me out!" Panic clawed at my throat. I turned back to the storage room, desperately searching for another way out. The light flickered above, and that's when I saw it, a figure crouched in the corner, partially obscured by shadows. Chill ran down my spine. "Who's there?" I called, my voice trembling. No answer. I edged closer, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. As I got near, I realized it was a girl, the same girl from just moments ago. But her expression was different now, eyes wide and glassy, as if she were caught in a trance. "Help me," she whispered, but this time, the words sounded empty, devoid of fear or urgency. "Are you okay?" I didn't know why I asked. It wasn't like I had the answers. She didn't respond, just stared through me as if I were a ghost. Behind me, I heard rustling, the sound of something scraping against the floor. I spun around to see more shadows taking shape, coalescing into another figure emerging from the darkness. The man. Did you think you could escape? His voice was low and mocking, laced with satisfaction. He stepped into the faint light, his eyes glinting with malice. Your choice hasn't changed. Save her, or save yourself. Why are you doing this? I demanded, my voice rising. What does she mean to you? He chuckled, a chilling sound that made my skin crawl. She's more than you think. But you're too late now. You should have known better than to step into this game. His smile was sinister, and suddenly I felt a strong urge to run again. I glanced back at the girl. Her gaze was still fixed on me, but now the darkness seemed to radiate from her. Fear gripped my chest. I took a breath, ready to make my choice, but in that moment, the lights flickered again, a cascade of blinding sparks showering around us. Everything went dark once more. Then I heard a low growl, the sound reverberating off the walls. Someone else was in the room. I could feel it. I had to act now, but how could I choose between saving her or saving myself if I couldn't even see what was coming for me? The growl came again, louder this time, reverberating deep within the walls. My heart raced as the darkness pressed closer, almost suffocating. I couldn't waste time. I had to find a way out. I turned back toward the girl, but her silhouette was barely visible now. Stay close. I yelled, but she didn't respond. I took a hesitant step forward, feeling my way through the gloomy room. The air was thick with the scent of rust and decay, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I had to figure out what was happening. As I moved deeper into the storage room, my foot brushed against something heavy, a box, maybe. I bent down, fumbling for its edges. I finally lifted it enough to see it was filled with old medical instruments, their ends glinting dully in the faint light. I swallowed hard. This place was a nightmare. Suddenly, the growl erupted again, closer this time, and I knew I wasn't alone. My pulse quickened as I shot back toward the door, desperate to break free. I banged against it, let me out. Please. No response. Then a shuffling sound came from behind the boxes. I froze, a fresh wave of panic flooding my veins. I just had to keep my eyes on the door. I couldn't turn around, I couldn't face whatever was in the shadows. I need to get out of here, I whispered to myself, trying to convince my trembling hands to find the grip on the knob again. Before I could gather the courage, a sharp gasp echoed through the darkness. It wasn't the girl. It wasn't the man. I crouched low, scanning the shadows for movement, my heart pounding in my ears. That's when I saw a pair of eyes blinking back at me, glowing faintly in the blackness. They were almost feline, but the way they watched me felt so impossibly human. I could hardly breathe. What do you want? I croaked out, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure stepped forward, revealing a small, hunched creature with pale skin and fraying clothes. Its eyes were wide, full of terror or perhaps something worse. As it edged closer, it let out a choked cry, pointing towards the darkness where the girl sat. I felt a rush of sympathy for it. You can help her, right? I took a step forward, my instinct to help kicking in. The creature shook its head frantically, backing away as if it were terrified of the girl. No. It rasped, its voice cracked and raw. She's not who you think. You must leave. It turned to glance over its shoulder. Before it comes for you. I felt the world tilt. I needed answers. The man's words, the girl's gaze, everything was tangled in confusion. What do you mean? What is she? The creature opened its mouth to respond, but before it could finish, the growl erupted again, a thunderous snarl that shook the storage room. Go! The creature screamed. In a flash, the room was filled with flickering lights once more, shadows leaping to life. I felt the air crackle with energy. I had no time to think, I barreled toward the door, desperation coursing through me. Just as I reached for the knob, the door swung open. Standing there was the man, a triumphant smile twisting across his face. "I see you've met our little friend. But time mess up," he said, stepping aside as the shadows behind him shifted ominously. In that moment, I realized escaping wasn't the hard part. It was surviving what was lurking in the darkness that would matter most. As I stumbled into the hallway, the man's laughter echoed behind me, sending fresh chills racing through my skin. The stark lights above flickered, and I felt the oppressive weight of the darkness still lurking nearby. I didn't dare look back, I just had to run. The corridor stretched endlessly ahead, lined with ominous doors. I sprinted past them, my mind racing with questions and fears. What had the creature meant? What was the girl? I couldn't let the thoughts overwhelm me. I focused on moving, putting one foot in front of the other, trying to escape the nightmare. I reached a junction, where the corridor split into two. To my left, I heard strange noises, whispers, perhaps. I shook my head and took the right path, where an emergency exit sign glowed unsteadily at the end. As I sprinted, the growl echoed again, much closer this time. I paused, trying to catch my breath, fighting the urge to scream. But there was no time. Just as I turned toward the exit, I heard more shuffling, this time accompanied by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps. I knew I couldn't stay. I pushed through the door, bursting into a stairwell that smelled of mildew. I had only a moment of relief before I heard the metal door crash open behind me. I scrambled down the stairs, two at a time, glancing back only once. The man appeared in the doorway, anger etched on his face. For an instant, I saw a glimmer of something sharp in his hand. I picked up speed, my legs screaming for rest. I reached the bottom and flung open the door to the basement level, the air heavy and damp. A flickering light bulb hung from the ceiling, casting distorted shadows that danced against the walls. I stepped into the room and froze. The walls were lined with old surgical tables and jars filled with murky substances. I didn't want to think about what they contained. In the center of the room was a large set of double doors, and beyond them, I could hear muffled sounds, soft cries and whispers that sent shivers up my spine. Something was definitely wrong. I didn't know what to do. My instinct screamed at me to keep moving, to find a way out. But curiosity clawed at me, pulling me closer toward the doors. What if the girl was in there? What if she was in danger? Before I could contemplate it further, the heavy footsteps echoed again from the stairwell. This time, I was certain they were not just the man. More growls filled the air, each one sounding more feral than the last. I felt the floor beneath me tremble, as though whatever was in the darkness was hungry. With no other choice, I approached the double doors, adrenaline coursing through my veins. As I touched the handle, a sudden thought hit me: what if opening this door sealed my fate? My heart raced at the uncertainty, but I was running out of options. Just as I decided to turn back, the door creaked open on its own. I stood frozen, a sickening dread filling my stomach. The darkness beyond seemed to pulse, beckoning me forward. Whatever fate awaited me on the other side, I was about to find out. The heavy door swung open, revealing a dimly lit room thrumming with energy. I hesitated, a cold chill creeping down my arms as I stepped into the unpredictable abyss. The air was thick with an unsettling aroma, a mix of antiseptic and something far more sinister. Before I could react, the sound of soft weeping caught my attention. My heart raced as I scanned the room's corners, each shadow more daunting than the last. In the far corner, slumped against the wall, sat the little girl. Her hair hung in tangled curls, and her eyes, wide with terror, bore into mine. But there was something else there, a flicker of understanding or darkness. I jogged over, urgency amplifying my steps as the whispers around us intensified. "Please, help me," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "They want to let me out." "Who want to?" I asked, kneeling beside her, my breath shallow. Her gaze darted nervously toward the far side of the room, a place submerged in shadows. The laughter, once innocent, now felt mocking, a cacophony brewing just beyond reach. "They want to keep me here," she said. "They want to let you go either." Just then, the double doors trembled as if something beyond wanted to burst through. I pushed the girl behind me instinctively, heart pounding with dread. "Stay close," I shouted, but I still felt trapped in a surreal painting where the figures danced in eerie silence. Suddenly, the shadows morphed, twisting into a palpable darkness that seemed alive. The man emerged, and his laughter echoed through the space, sending chills racing down my spine. "You're too late," he taunted, advancing toward us. "She's mine." I clenched my fists, a mixture of fear and determination coursing through me. "You can't keep her here," I yelled, glancing back at the girl, who clutched the fabric of my coat, her eyes filled with apprehension. "Don't listen to him," she cried, stepping out from behind me. "He'll take you too." The man sneered, but shadows coiled around him, and the air thickened like fog. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." He lifted his hand, and the walls trembled under his command. The very fabric of reality felt frayed, and I could sense the darkness weaving deeper into the room. Each word of his seemed to twist the shadows further, but I felt an unexpected spark of defiance rising within me. "No more," I shouted, feeling the force of my voice resonate against the walls. In that moment, the shadows hesitated, and the girl looked up at me, almost hopeful. I pushed forward, breaking through the fear that bound me. "We can both escape," I shouted at the man. "Together." "Fool!" he screeched, his form engulfed with shadow. "You have no idea what you're inviting." But something about my declaration shifted the energy in the room, and the shadows recoiled momentarily. The girl grasped my hand tighter. "We can do it together," she urged, hope threading through her frightened demeanor. As the man advanced, laughter unfurling into a sinister symphony, I could see the entrance to escape swirling in the candle flickering at the back. "Now," I urged, pulling the girl towards the light as I felt the shadows thrash behind us, angered by our resolve. The laughter morphed into anguished screams as we sprinted toward the exit. I could feel the darkness chasing us, trying to tether us back into despair, but I clung tightly to the girl's hand, a lifeline in this haunting chaos. In one moment, we burst through the doorway, tumbling into a bright corridor bathed in an otherworldly glow that washed over us like a cleansing tide. The man's furious cries dissipated behind us as the light pulled us deep into the unknown. Thankful for our newfound freedom, I glanced at the girl. "We did it!" I exclaimed, breathless but relieved. "Not yet," she replied quietly, her gaze shifting towards the shadows I could still feel brushing at the edges of the corridor. "We might have escaped that room, but they aren't gone. They are always here, watching." I turned to face the corridor, uncertainty knotting within me. The air grew tense, questions swirling. What had we truly escaped? What awaited us? I thought of the creature, the man's warning, and the whispers that echoed behind us. Was the girl truly free, or was this just the beginning? "I want to help you," I murmured, trying to ignore the chilling laughter haunting from the distance. "I know," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But you have to be careful. You may not understand yet, but I can't protect you from them." And as the echoes of laughter faded into the distance, I realized that even though we had eluded one nightmare, countless others loomed in the shadows, leaving me with an unsettling question: were we truly safe, or was this only the surface of a reality yet to be explored?